Yeah, she's a hard guard because she's coming with so much speed in the transition with the high drags. I mean, we were just trying to crowd her as much as we can and then shrink off certain other players. And but yeah, she's just crafty. I think when Slim wasn't there and Julie wasn't there, they were our two main players that were guarding her to a high level. And Maria, she played hard, but she's Caitlin is just really too crafty. So Caitlin's a great player, and she certainly.
There are moments in sports when an opposing coach accidentally reveals more truth than an entire season of debates, arguments, and television segments. This was one of those moments. While much of the basketball world continues arguing about where Caitlin Clark belongs among the elite players of the WNBA, Sandy Brondello delivered an assessment that cut through all the noise. No political answer, no carefully crafted headline, no attempt to minimize what Caitlin Clark was doing on the floor. Instead, Sandy Brondello described the exact nightmare every defense faces: speed, craftiness, vision, creation, and most importantly, control. Because the biggest misunderstanding surrounding Caitlin Clark has never been about whether she can score. The basketball world already knows Caitlin Clark can score from anywhere on the floor. Defenses know it. Coaches know it, fans know it. The real problem Caitlin Clark presents is that she forces defenses to make impossible choices. If defenders crowd Caitlin Clark, she creates opportunities for teammates. If defenders stay home on shooters, Caitlin Clark attacks. If defenders blitz Caitlin Clark, she finds the open player. If defenders switch, Caitlin Clark identifies the mismatch instantly. That is exactly what Sandy Brondello was describing. What made these comments so significant wasn't simply the praise. It was the admission that even with a game plan specifically designed to slow Caitlin Clark, the result was still a player controlling every possession. And that's where this story begins. Not with a highlight, not with a logo 3. But with an opposing championship coach publicly acknowledging a reality that many people have spent months trying to deny. Caitlin Clark isn't just difficult to guard. Caitlin Clark changes the entire geometry of a basketball game.
Yeah, she created, 14 assists. She's creating for her teammates as well too, when we started probably ball watching a little bit more. But yeah, we can learn from it and move forward.
She said Caitlin named more in one press conference than Stephanie White has wanted to say all season. Sandy said it. She's moving too fast. She's too crafty. We tried to crowd her. We tried to keep multiple bodies in front of her. But what are we going to do? The girl's throwing for...
The most revealing part of Sandy Brondello's comments wasn't that Caitlin Clark scored. It was that Caitlin Clark dominated without relying solely on scoring. 14 assists. Think about what that number means. Every assist represents a defensive breakdown. Every assist means Caitlin Clark forced defenders to make a decision they didn't want to make. Every assist means Caitlin Clark manipulated the floor. When Sandy Brondello talked about crowding Caitlin Clark and shrinking the court around her, she was describing the exact strategy many teams have attempted. Load up on Caitlin Clark, put multiple bodies in front of Caitlin Clark, take away space, take away rhythm, take away comfort. Yet Caitlin Clark still finished as the central force behind the offense. That is what separates good players from transformational players. A good scorer can be contained if the shot isn't falling. A great playmaker controls the game regardless. Sandy Brondello essentially admitted that Caitlin Clark's impact extended far beyond the box score. The Indiana offense was functioning because Caitlin Clark was creating advantages before defenders could react. Every transition push forced defenders backward. Every high screen forced communication. Every pass forced rotation. Every rotation created another opening. This is why defenses become exhausted against players like Caitlin Clark. The challenge isn't stopping one action. The challenge is surviving an entire chain reaction. And once Caitlin Clark gets defenders thinking instead of reacting, she's already won the possession. Sandy Brondello understood this firsthand. Her team wasn't simply guarding a shooter. Her team was trying to guard an offensive ecosystem that revolved entirely around Caitlin Clark. That's a completely different challenge. And when an opposing coach openly acknowledges that reality, it carries more weight than any social media debate ever could. Because coaches don't care about narratives. Coaches care about winning. And Sandy Brondello's words sounded like the assessment of someone who had just spent 40 minutes trying to solve a problem with no perfect answer.
The girl was too much. Sandy Brondello recognizes the greatness of Caitlin Clark. Not only the ability to score, but the ability to get everybody else involved. That is the difference from Caitlin Clark and every other guard in this league. She can fill it up, the entire stat sheet. The entire stat sheet. Sandy Brondello, we might need to keep you on speed dial. Things aren't, haven't been smooth sailing over.
Sandy Brondello's description of Caitlin Clark points toward something bigger than a single game. It points toward the evolution of modern basketball. Historically, great point guards controlled tempo. Great scorers controlled shot making. Very few players have possessed the ability to control both simultaneously. That's what makes Caitlin Clark such a difficult scouting report. Caitlin Clark combines deep shooting range with elite court vision. The moment Caitlin Clark crosses half court, defenders are already operating under pressure. Most players become dangerous near the three-point line. Caitlin Clark becomes dangerous the second she enters the front court. That changes everything. The psychological impact on defenses is enormous. Players hesitate, rotations arrive late, help defenders cheat toward Caitlin Clark. Passing lanes suddenly appear. Sandy Brondello wasn't describing a player who got hot. Sandy Brondello was describing a player who bends defensive structure. That's a distinction that matters. Throughout basketball history, players who altered defensive schemes became franchise-changing stars. The reason is simple. You don't build defenses around average players. You build defenses around players capable of destroying your game plan. And Caitlin Clark is reaching that territory. When Sandy Brondello acknowledged Caitlin Clark's craftiness, she wasn't talking about flashy moves. She was talking about processing speed, the ability to recognize defensive coverages instantly, the ability to predict help rotations, the ability to identify openings before they appear. Those skills are often invisible to casual fans, but coaches see them immediately. That's why Sandy Brondello's comments carried so much significance. They weren't emotional, they were tactical. And tactical praise from opposing coaches often tells the real story, because those coaches spend countless hours searching for weaknesses. When they instead start discussing strengths, it usually means those strengths are impossible to ignore. Caitlin Clark has reached that point. The evidence is no longer limited to highlights. The evidence is now coming directly from the people trying to stop her.
Bro, the chokehold. When Caitlin's going, it's like a boulder rolling downhill. It's tough to stop.
Clark! What a banger!
You have to guard her the whole court, the whole 94 feet.
We expect to see the magic that we have grown accustomed to when watching Caitlin.
She's changed the game of basketball.
Have fun! Get this crowd behind us! Use it! Let's go! We gotta clean it up! Help! Help! Help!
So I have a long ways ahead of me. I have a lot of things that I can...
The second half of this story reveals just how large Caitlin Clark's influence has become. Because Sandy Brondello's comments arrived at the same time, Caitlin Clark's brand continued expanding beyond the basketball court. The sneaker discussions, the promotional campaigns, the growing national spotlight, all of it reflects the same reality. Caitlin Clark is no longer simply a player. Caitlin Clark has become an ecosystem. Franchises notice it, sponsors notice it, television networks notice it, opposing coaches definitely notice it. And that's where Sandy Brondello's words become even more important. The praise wasn't based on marketing. The praise wasn't based on popularity. The praise came from competition. Sandy Brondello evaluated Caitlin Clark through the lens every coach trusts most: what happens when the game starts. And according to Sandy Brondello, what happened was simple. Caitlin Clark forced adjustments. Caitlin Clark forced extra attention. Caitlin Clark forced defensive compromises. That creates ripple effects throughout an entire organization. Teammates receive easier opportunities. Offenses become more efficient. Free agents pay attention. National exposure increases. Franchise value rises. The impact stretches far beyond one stat sheet. That's why these comments feel different. They validate what many observers have been seeing. Caitlin Clark's value isn't confined to points scored. Her value comes from how dramatically she changes everything around her. And if that trend continues, Caitlin Clark could become one of the defining players of this era, not because of hype. Not because of headlines, but because opposing coaches keep arriving at the same conclusion. Stopping Caitlin Clark is one challenge. Containing everything Caitlin Clark creates is another challenge entirely.